Okay, it's transferring over right now to live stream.
Perfect, thank you. So I think that we shared, maybe last time Uncle Charlie shared that he was going to be out of town for this meeting. And so our Vice Chair Shirley is going to chair today. And then just before we get started, I'm going to go through reading this little blurb that we always read at the beginning. Because of the COVID-19 emergency and state and federal guidance on large meetings or gatherings and pursuant to the mayor's proclamation regarding COVID-19, Community Development Plan Action Committee meetings will be held online until further notice. Members of the public have the option to watch the CDP Action Committee meetings live on the Planning Department's Zoom channel or join the meeting by Zoom link. And so we're really excited to include community in this virtual setting. And so we ask for your patience as we navigate kind of through this. And so this is our first virtual meeting where we're inviting public into the Zoom. So we're happy to have Cindy in and George is in and Chuck is in. And so we just ask for patience as we try to navigate on how to better include community in our online platform. And so Alexis is just going to very quickly go over some Zoom tips and Aloha etiquette as we move into our meeting.
Welcome back, everyone. So just a friendly reminder, if you can, to have only one person speak at a time. And if you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand or you can use the raise hand function and wait for recognition from the chair before speaking. We also have the chat function set up. So if you feel comfortable using the chat, you can flag something there for us. And Keiko and I will help monitor. So if we see something that's important, we'll make sure to vocalize that when we get the opportunity. We know that the chat can also be distracting for some people. So if this is the case for you, then don't feel obligated to view your chat. You can keep it closed. And we also just ask that you please silence your cell phones or any other devices or things that could be distracting. We can focus on the meeting. And before I turn it over to Shirley, does anyone want me to walk you through the raise hand function or the chat function to use? Or do you all feel comfortable? I'm seeing some nods. Okay, great. Shirley, over to you.
Thank you. So I call this meeting of the Kona CDP Action Committee to order. It's September 9th at, I don't know, it's at 5:08 p.m. So first of all, we'll do a roll call for our members. Marissa, David.
Here.
Thank you. Kari.
Here.
Thank you. Rosalind.
Here.
Janice. No, and
Here.
Jane.
Here.
Yeah. Rosalind is there. Did I hear Janice?
No, that was me. I'm here.
Oh, okay, we got it. And Shane.
Here.
And Franz. Not here. And Uncle Charlie is excused. So usually Uncle Charlie does the Olelo no e all. And I've invited Shane to do it tonight. So you have the floor, Shane.
Thank you. And, I found something like a few days ago. And, yeah, so today's Olelo no Eao is Wahilo ia kia ho kia aloha. The chords are braided together with compassion. So each chord is like a thought. And in our meetings, we braid our thoughts together as a community. And it's through our halavai or our meetings that we're able to bring out resolutions or bring out ideas that are best suited for our community. So that's our Olelo no Eao for today.
Thank you, Shane.
I'm just gonna, sorry, Shirley, I don't mean
Yes,
to
I
interrupt.
see Franz is here now.
Awesome.
Yes,
And I
I
also,
am. Yeah.
Welcome, Franz.
Awesome. I also just wanted to recognize Councilmember Holeka Inaba, who is here with us today. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you for being here. So we haven't received any requests for additions to the agenda. So we'll just do the announcements then. So Keiko, could you give us a general plan update?
Sure. So I have a couple announcements. Oh, I see Janice logging on.
Yes.
And just as a reminder, when this YouTube is streaming live to, when this Zoom is streaming live to YouTube, if your camera is not on, it won't show you. Your voice will still be recorded, but it won't have a picture. So it looks like a blank screen. Okay, so Shirley asked for a GP update, and it's really the same update as we provided at the last meeting, and that the administration is continuing to review the components of the general plan comprehensive review. And once that review is completed, then administration will work with staff to update the timeline for the next phases. And the next phases include additional public review, planning commission hearings, and then finally submittal to county council for adoption. So that's that update. We also have an update on Kona Open Space Network. And so the Kona Open Space Network activity will be led by the infrastructure and design section within the long range planning. So at our last meeting, we introduced that team was Natasha Soriano and Rob Leisure. And so right now, what they're doing is updating the draft scope. And so what their hope is, by mid-October, they hope to have a high-level plan for key activities and dates that would take us from setting scope through vendor selection and contracting. And so you're hearing it here live, that the intention is to meet with the Kona Open Space Network Investigatory Committee during the second half of October to discuss and figure out and nail down collaboration moving forward. So you can expect that either Rob or Natasha will be contacting you folks soon so that we can start to work on this. Those are my updates.
And I think that would be Kari and Janice and B. Is there anybody else on that? I think there's the three of us, right?
Yeah.
Great. That's wonderful news.
Awesome.
Does anybody have any questions about those two updates?
No.
We're glad things are moving ahead. So then, Alexis, if you could, you do an update on the survey results from the August 12th joint AC meeting.
Yes. Let me just bring my screen up. Okay, can you see that okay? Okay, perfect. So we sent out a survey after we did the joint AC meeting August 12th, and we just wanted to share with everyone, some of the results that we got. So as far as representation, we had about 14 responses for most questions. Hamakua had the largest group there. And one of the questions we asked was how people felt about the joint AC achieving the following. So for information sharing, all 14 people said that, 100%. For educational awareness, a little bit less. We had collaborative problem solving people felt that was the least amount of what was achieved there, and somewhat about half thought it was good for networking. Most people responded well to the joint AC. They thought it was fairly engaging, or very engaging and slightly. So we had some good responses to that. We also asked people, how can we improve our virtual convening? So a few people had mentioned holding one joint AC meeting a year. Some people also said They wanted to move it to utilize the group's input to achieve a task and get to an action. There's a handful who said that they liked the meeting as it was and they had no suggestions. One person didn't think it was a good use of our time. And there were some other people who wanted to get to the next steps of what ACs could do before adjourning. People thought it was helpful to have corporation counsel there, and also requested more interaction between AC members. Another question we asked is, what trainings or workshops would you be interested in for your AC or for your community? So a few people didn't have input. A couple people referenced DPW, infrastructure priorities organized by district, or going through EPIC, the new online permitting system. There was a request for specific county department heads and staff to be present and interact with ACs on community identified issues. There was also people wanting to know more of how the county functions and how the process works for different things, and they referenced ONC as a good presentation. People wanted ACs to act rather than do more trainings. There was also some talk about the general plan and wanting to know more about the status on that, and a training on community-based management and monitoring. And when we asked if there was anything else they would like to share with us about the AC meeting, most people were thankful. They found it very informative. A few people thought it was great for collective strength and knowledge amongst ACs and being able to share information. And there was also somewhat of a consensus of it being good to have on Zoom due to everybody's travel distances, and also some more references to it being an annual meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Does anyone have any questions?
Awesome.
Okay.
And I think what we want to encourage is this kind of dialogue around how we can continue to improve how we communicate with each other. And so if there are ever questions that you folks want to pose to Action Committee members or to community, because just as a reminder, this survey was also shared with the community members who participated and who watched on YouTube. And so their answers are also included in this. And so just as another communication tool of how we can better engage.
I see that Janice has her hand up.
Hi.
Welcome, Janice.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the good news on the Open Space Network. Hey, so I guess what I'm wondering is, what are we gonna, like, that was interesting, their responses, but how are we using that directly? Because it seems like the answers are all over the place. It's, you know, like, some people feel like it's great to get together. Some people feel like it's a waste of time to get together. You know, I mean, the answers really spanned a big gamut. So how are we really planning to use that information?
Yeah, so I think we're still working through that as well. But I think part of that is just a reminder of it's a space that we want to provide if folks are interested in collaborating. And if you don't have an interest, I mean, if you have other things going on that are just specific to your district and there's maybe no connection with what other action committees are working on, then certainly we don't want to force the issue. We want it to kind of organically grow so that we can find these synergies and kind of push on them a little bit more. But we don't want it to be a forced space. So I think that's kind of what we're taking from this too, is that some folks felt it was really helpful and others didn't. And so then how can we kind of figure out that balance in between that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I can clarify a little bit too, just because it's fresh in my mind looking at the responses. There was really only one response that didn't seem to understand what it was for, or thought it, you know, it wasn't a good use of our time. Everyone else either thought it was informative, was okay, or they welcomed more of that. So just to clarify on that.
I can see that if we have a presenter to present a topic that would be of interest to all of our action committees, that it saves on the presenters time too if we can get together and listen to it all together. So I see that as a really good use of our time and their time.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that with when the punk did their presentation. Instead of taking up time of each AC's agenda, we were able to just come together and just kind of knock it all out at once. You know, I mean, I thought that was good. And then we were able to collaborate based on what the punk presented, which was kind of cool. But yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Well, thank you for sharing those results. So we'll go to the public comments, and I know that there's one, George is here to comment on item 2 of our meeting agenda. George, would you like to comment now, or would you rather wait until we get to that item?
Alexis, is that me?
Yes.
George Yasuda?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
You
yeah.
probably can't see all of us, and yes, George Yasuda. You're the only George here, but yes.
Thanks. Yeah, if it's okay with you guys, I'll comment now.
Oh, okay.
And I'm gonna go ahead and show some photos. I'm gonna share my screen and run through some photos that George has sent me today and yesterday for you folks to see. Okay, George, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, thank you. First of all, hi, and thank you, AC community members and others there. And also, thank you, Alexis, for being super efficient and organized. And because I'm on the phone, I can't see what photos you're showing, but if the AC committee members can go through these videos and photos, and again, these videos and photos are not at the thick of things. They are not when the flood is at the worst. We've had times when we've had to do rescues during this flooding, and there's boulders, just passing by us, and the ground is shaking. Some of these videos have sound enough to show that you can hear how threatening it is, life-threatening, but in the real thing, it's way more, and you got logs, just flying by you, rocks and everything. So if we can mitigate all this, it'll be so good, especially the end product, the ocean. And there should be some photos in there showing the ocean being muddied up, both in 2015 and also in this past June 19, we had the ocean just muddied up real bad. So again, trillions of coral polyps died, yeah. And all that spawning, staying away from the coral spawning, that all went to waste because just within 2 weeks, all the coral had died. Most of it, majority of them. Yeah, so in cooperation with the county, you guys and Senator Schatz' team, hopefully we can come up with a viable solution. Because this has been ongoing, and it's been all the way from Kyopu all the way down to Honau now. Some are, very, I should say many are preventable, and some are not. But if we can prevent this, because there's so much damage being done, and a lot of them irreversible, compared to back decades, coral was way more healthy than now. The coral is just not healthy anymore, and we can't lose that. So, yeah, that's my mission, just to make sure we can come up with good solutions in cooperation with everybody, and including private landowners, the state, county, federal government, and come up with some good solutions. So that's it. Thanks. So when you guys get a chance, you guys can look at the videos and photos.
Thank you, George. So those videos, I'm sure you've seen them quite a few times. They they were really good to have with this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there any other comments? Are you planning to stay till we discussed item 2? George?
No, I have to leave for some other engagement I have, but anytime anybody has questions, Alexis, you can give them my number. Feel free to call me and we can discuss the photos, the videos, and I have much more. We did an open helicopter ride, taking photos of some sources of the flooding. And then I have some other photos too. And then we can discuss that. So anytime, feel free to call me.
Thank you for that offer.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll move on now to the approval of the minutes. We actually have several.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm a member of the public who had requested to do oral testimony.
Shirley, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Somebody else had testimony?
Yeah, we have, I think we have Chuck, and I think we had 2 more, Madam Chair. I think we had 2 more other testimonies, or testifiers, I should say.
Cindy is joining us, but I don't believe she was going to testify. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy. I think she was participating. Chuck, did you wish to testify?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Okay, you can go ahead and, which item is it? Do you want to testify now or when we get to the item?
I can go ahead and just mention now, rather than continuing to interrupt the meeting, I'll just cover very quickly within 3 minutes what I have to say, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay.
Is this for item 1 or item 2?
It's going to cover announcement item 1 and 2.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, members of the KCDP. So with regard to announcements, if it's possible, because the GP general plan update is a matter of importance, and had it been listed under announcements, there may have been people such as myself that would have wanted to provide some concerns or testimony with regard to that, but we weren't aware that that might have been an option under this agenda. So in general, if the agenda could list out the different subcommittees and whatever working groups that the KCDP Action Committee is involved in, that would really help out as far as the community actually knowing what sort of working groups and committee subcommittees are ongoing, so they can either participate or have input into those, or perhaps have discussions with the members outside of the context of this official capacity. With regard to item 1, I was when I first heard about the Joint Action Committee meetings, I was a little concerned because the purpose of the KCDPs were local control over community development. And while I can see the good side of communication and interaction between the CDPs, especially in mutually shared issues, and as Shane was saying, when there's a presenter that's providing information that's valid, appropriate for everyone, I just want to remind yourselves, because this is the pot calling the kettle black, that you're volunteers and your community volunteers. And my concern is that you'll be distracted from looking at your community. I think all of you are very much aware of the issues island-wide. But I also know that you're very interested in serving the Kona community. That's why you're on the CDP. So I also was wondering, what is the authority for the island-wide Joint Action Committee? Was that something that is in the general plan, or I mean, what was the authority under which that was created? was another question. And if there can be an organizational chart or flow chart, I know the planning committee has talked to each of you and found out what organizations y'all are involved in. And that actually probably would be a really great thing for all of the CDP members from all of the different action committees to see what organizations members from other, you maybe another action committee from the other side of the island, but you share the same organization as far as involvement. So I could see where those types of things would be great, but I think a lot of that communication can be done simply graphically through flow charts and organizational charts. And with regard to item 2, flood control erosion, oh my goodness, this is something I've been involved in for years. It's something that is an increasing problem, obviously. I just want to let the committee know that I have a great deal of information. Committee member Kimura remembers when we went through this massive flooding control revision of the county ordinance, chapter 27 of the county code years ago. But another item is that the erosion control ordinance itself was supposed to have been revised. That was actually part of the 1250 Oceanside Partners settlement, and the administration under Mayor Kim and Mayor Kinoy never did undertake that, even though they had committed to it. There is a revision of the erosion control ordinance that was done. It just has never been brought forth to the county council. So I think that work, which involved members of the community, consultants, and as a formal document, that if y'all could, if you would start from there, and I think that may be a good place to move forward for your work. That's really all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time and for all that you do for our community. And I yield to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. So let us move on then to the minutes. So we have several minutes to approve. So the first one, I believe March 22nd, we didn't have a quorum to vote on it the last time. So we're going to vote on it now. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 22nd?
I move to approve the minutes.
And do I have a
Mrs.
second?
Frost.
I second.
We have a second. So we'll take the roll. Marissa? To either raise your hand, say aye, or
Aye.
Marissa? So that was, oh, Marissa isn't here.
Aye, Janice.
Okay, David?
Aye.
Aye. Kari?
Aye.
Rosalind?
Aye.
And Janice and I already. Shane?
Aye.
Franz?
Yes, aye.
Motion carries. So can we have a motion for the June 22nd minutes?
I move to approve the June 22nd minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. So David?
Aye.
Aye. Kari?
Aye.
Aye. Rosalind?
Aye.
Thank you. Janice?
Oops. Aye. Sorry.
Shane?
Aye.
And Franz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Lastly, we have a motion and a second to accept the August 12th meeting minutes. So that's David,
Aye.
Kari,
Aye.
Rosalind,
Sorry,
Aye.
did we get a
Janet?
motion in a second
Oh, I thought we did.
for this last set?
Yeah, didn't we? No,
Is this the
the August 12th. Janice, you're muted. We can do it again. I didn't know who it was. Can I have a motion for August 12th?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah. Thank you,
I
David.
second.
Jane, thank you. So far we've let's see, we have Kari,
Oh, sorry, yes. Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Franz,
I approve.
Janice.
Aye.
Rosalind.
Aye.
Hey.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, so our first order of business is the Island-wide Action Committee member initiatives. The Action Committee members will discuss and consider taking action on topics discussed at the August 12th, 2021 joint AC meeting. The Action Committee may consider establishing an investigatory subcommittees relative to specific initiatives that advance CDP implementation, with the potential to establish working groups with members of other action committees. So the members in attendance were Marissa, Kari, Shane, Janice, and Fox. So those of you that attended, do you have any initiatives that you think we should consider to work with other action committees?
So, Madam Chair, Shane Nelson.
Jane?
So I think I don't want to cut us short for the future. Like right now, I don't see anything specific that we would. As the testifier, Mr. Flaherty, had mentioned, you know, we've been working and focusing basically in our district. But I also see that at some point, we may see something that we could collaborate, particularly, possibly even like initiatives like housing and stuff like that, that could be a collaborative effort, particularly with other districts that are neighboring us, such as the South Kohala and the Ka'u districts that we could be working with directly. I don't want to cut ourselves short. I think it's an option. I don't feel like we would lose focus. I feel like we've always kept focus, but at the same time, if we're going to create some sort of subcommittee to address that, then I'd like to make sure that we do have language in our subcommittee to keep us focused in the Kona district. But again, as Uncle Charlie and I would always advocate, even in Kona, there's a line drawn between North and South Kona where lifestyles are different and issues are different, even in development and how we deal with floodways, how we deal with roadways. It's different even within our Kona district. So, I mean, I think if anybody on this entire island, if any district has an understanding of how to bring two districts together, it would be ours. Thank you, Ayo.
Thank you.
If I can just share real quickly relative to what Shane is saying, I think one of the things that stood out in my mind after the conversation on August 12th was the interest around emergency preparedness and building resilience within our communities. And so to Shane's point exactly, is this looks different in every district and in every community almost. But the question was asked of Corp Council whether if action committees created investigatory subcommittees, say around outlining specific community priorities or priority actions that could increase emergency preparedness, those permitted interaction groups or investigatory subcommittees from each action committee would be able to collaborate and work together, which might make the process a little bit faster. And then say what came out of that was, we need to identify access routes between communities. Then that would be taken back to the district level action committees, right? So maybe the broader list comes out of this work together. And so I'm not sure, as Shane says, if we're there yet and we're ready to do that. But that was just one of the things that stood out in my mind, I think, after the conversation.
Janice.
Hi, thanks. I think it's a little bit, as much as I understand the concept of working together with the other regions, I think that it's a little premature because there's still so much to do in our own. And I think what Shane said is true, is just even between North and South Kona, there's a lot of variation. And I don't know. I mean, there's so much to do on our CDP. There's so much work ahead of us. And I just don't want it to get diluted. I think what Chuck was saying, resonated with me as well. So I think it's, our mandate is really to be community centric in this, because we have a planning department that's island wide. We have a general plan that's island wide, but the regional plans are, meant to be different and take our planning in a different direction. Where I think things overlap, that's really important and really great. But I just feel like there's still like these, burning issues, whether it be housing or, and once again, what Shane was saying, like housing has a way different look in South Kona than in North Kona. The problems, the challenges are all really different. But I think we need to keep working as this group in our regions and try to get somewhere just there, because it's a lot, it's so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam
Any
Chair.
other? Who is?
Shane again. Sorry.
Oh, Shane,
Madam Chair,
I'm
it's
not
me, Shane.
seeing. Where are you? Oh, there you are. You moved on my screen.
I like moving around, Madam Chair. That's
Yeah.
that's my forte. If I don't
Yeah.
move around, then I'm not active.
Could I say one thing, Shane? So
Yeah.
our background screens, you have South Kona on and I have North Kona. So
Yeah, right on. Yeah.
there you go. All right, go ahead.
So Madam Chair, as far as business item number 1, what is the goal for us to, and I know Keiko had mentioned that Corp Council wanted us to like either come up with an idea whether or not we want to formulate a subcommittee to address a joint committee. Is that, Keiko, can Keiko provide a little bit more clarification as to what is item number 1? What we got to do with item number 1?
I think the main objective of item number 1 is kind of what you guys are doing already, is tossing back and forth ideas about whether it would be worth the time and energy of this group to engage island-wide or not, or how we can come together and kind of just put it. I think the advice from Corp Council was not that we should do it, but that if we wanted to collaborate in that way, we would be able to do that through these permitted interaction groups. And so it's really a committee decision. We just wanted to make sure that we were, that the agenda was clear enough that if you folks decided you wanted to take action, that could happen.
So Madam Chair, I have one question. If the Kona Community Development Action Committee does not want to participate, but others want to participate, would that kind of joint community meeting still continue, whether we participate or not?
You're asking for my opinion?
Well,
Would
because
it
you're the
happen?
chair, I gotta go through the chair. I'm not addressing
Okay.
Keiko directly, but if you're allowing me to talk to Keiko directly, I would definitely do that as well, Chair.
You could follow up on her comments directly if you'd like.
Thank you. Keiko, can you respond to that, please?
Sure. I think the option to meet would still stay open. This is something that
what we decide. Yeah.
Yeah, and it certainly wouldn't be a forced situation. It would be completely voluntary. It's something that some action committee members have been asking for a long time, is to be able to come together. And so this is that opportunity to do that. And I think it's, to several folks mentioned it earlier too, it's an opportunity to present information that we need shared out with community. It's also an opportunity for action committee members to share with the rest of the island the initiatives that they've been working on. So at this last joint AC meeting, it was mostly county folks sharing out or county partners sharing out. But it would be amazing if we had action committee members who would be able to share out their work that they're doing in community.
So my next question would be, if the Kona CDP decided not to participate, but we could eventually, as an individual, could I still participate in the joint AC?
Absolutely.
But I wouldn't be able to speak on behalf of being a CDP member of Kona. I wouldn't be able to speak on that behalf. I would be speaking as just a regular participant, if anything. Correct.
Yes. That was some of the difficulty we had, because we had the idea too of like trying to break out into breakout rooms. But because of sunshine law and because of how we're not able to
Right.
shoot all of the different breakout rooms, but it's definitely a place where we want community members to be able to come and get and share information. So maybe
Okay.
not so much the dialogue back and forth, but
Yeah.
definitely information sharing. Yeah,
Got it. Thank you, Keiko.
sure.
So if we were working on some type of a project, this is to you too, Keiko. So if we were working on one of our sub committees are working on a project, like say something from housing, and we saw that this was a bigger issue, then we could ask the other groups to join us in a meeting. I'm working on this project. If we think at least to ask them, are you interested in joining forces with this one with us?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and I think, when Kona Open Space Network is up and going full speed, that would be a great project to actually bring to the larger group, because it is something that lots of people are passionate about, and they won't be able to implement it in the same exact way that Kona does, but they'll be able to take process and lessons learned. And so I think that would be completely appropriate too, is to have folks sharing out the good work that's happening.
Yeah, I think, Chair, I think in one of my
Yes.
subcommittees, I did have someone from Puna. I think 2 people from Puna attended my subcommittee meetings in the past. Yeah.
That's right. So our subcommittees, we can invite other people that are not our members to be on.
Yeah, their community. That's why. Yeah,
Mhm.
their community. So, okay. Yeah. So, I guess my question is, what's the next step?
So does anybody else have any comments?
Can I jump in?
Janice had her hand up, but it's down now and I don't see her.
Shirley?
Okay, I see you there, Kari.
So, yeah, when I look at this, my own personal experience with the island wide, I thought it was a fabulous information getting out, and Zoom was very appropriate. But I also think that, for me, this action item 1, I don't feel that we've got something to put forth at this point, but I agree. Once Kona Open Space Network gets kicking, right now, there's something to report. It has to be purpose driven. And, I don't, even though there's some bigger items, I think infrastructure and looking at the state budget, right, where we always look at what are the major DPW projects that we want to support locally within Kona. Again, that's our group. And we come up with our priorities, right? But Hamakua should do their own, and Puna should do their own, right? So there's some bigger ones we have in common, but the specificity has to come from us. And so I don't think that there is a subcommittee that needs to be created today that I can see. So that's just my sharing.
Okay. Does anybody see a subcommittee that we want to create today? I'm not hearing that. Now, Janice, do you wanted to comment?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was just, I was thinking, what George was talking about flooding and, Chuck was also involved in that. It's not really my passion, although it intersects with everything that we care about really. But that does seem like an important topic that maybe if there was an action committee member or members who would be interested in making a subcommittee where they were those people who have a lot of experience and knowledge could, take part. I've been just trying to kind of think about, something also, related to climate change and resilience. I guess that would go kind of the conversation we had at the, the joint meeting, but more from a Kona-centric place. I don't have it solid in my mind. I'm just putting it out there to see if it grabs anybody or someone else thinks of an idea. Another thing that really is interesting to me is the interface between the coastal, the marine environment and the nearshore environment, and how, I know a lot of people who are involved in marine sciences and stuff like that. I keep trying to get them involved in the KCDP, but they don't really see their role in it, exactly, because it seems like it's land-based, but I see us just interacting, incredibly. And also that would be the flooding, they all kind of, once again, overlap. And then the last thing I was just wondering if there's anything, we always talk about the PONC situation, PONC and then the Open Space Network. And I keep wondering what more we can do. I have a pet project that I would like to get into, but at the moment I've just been just can't spend the time. But that was to get the Malka portion of Ooma acquired, because it just seems like a natural thing that should happen. It was one parcel of land once upon a time, and very interacting. And so I don't know. Those are the things that I've been thinking of. The flooding I wasn't really thinking of, but I know a lot of people have been, and just thoughts for what we might want to focus on.
Madam Chair, Shane Nelson again.
Yes, Shane.
This is directed to CAFO probably. I guess the sentiments that we're not ready to support creating a subcommittee. Do we still need to make a motion on this? And Keiko, do you need? Okay, that was my point. So, Madam Chair, I think you can just rule on the agenda item at this point.
Okay. So Shane is suggesting that we've discussed. We've all had a chance to discuss this, and we don't have a subcommittee that we're recommending at this time or wanting to start. Is that okay with everybody? Is there any objection to moving on to item 2?
No.
Okay. Then we will move on. So item 2 is discussing for us to provide our updates on any work relative to CDP implementation. So our action committee may consider establishing investigatory subcommittees relative to any initiatives that we want to advance for CDP implementation. So a couple of topics that have come up are flood mitigation and erosion control. We've talked about it tonight, and also affordable housing was another one that we don't necessarily need to even discuss these. We could discuss something else if we would like. So the first one on the list. So would anybody like to advance one of these 2 items? We might as well start with if they've been doing any work in this area with themselves or with other groups, and if there's something in the CDP that we can be investigating related to these.
So, Madam Chair, Shane Nelson again.
Hey, Shane.
I'd like to support the establishing a subcommittee regarding the flood mitigations and the erosion control as it relates to based on the testimonies that we heard from both Mr. Flaherty and George. and being in contact with George, I saw some other photos that impacted our shorelines, as well as some of the farms that had been destroyed, not just in the North Kona, but the South Kona areas as well. The streams are flowing massively within the past couple of months in South Kona. And also I'd like to also probably bring in the conversations regarding the FEMA mapping as well within this subcommittee, investigatory subcommittee, because if I'm not mistaken, the last time we had this conversation, I think previous Councilwoman Eoff, as well as Councilwoman David was in the committee at that time, and we were discussing about the FEMA mapping, and we were all kind of in disagreement to the final outcome. And the reality is that there's no comparison to the reality of the flood zone mapping that FEMA established to what's actually happening on our INA. So I'd like to probably establish a subcommittee that will, one, address the current policies, allow for Mr. Flaherty to bring forward his documentation through the subcommittee and have discussions, and also address the FEMA mapping. This would also include probably public works as well, I'm guessing. Because I think that was, Kari, remember that conversation? It was public works, yeah, Kari?
Yes, we got to get public works involved.
Yeah, so in the subcommittee, I would love to pull that subcommittee together and facilitate that discussion if everyone would agree with that. I don't have to be the chair, but I will offer to be the chair of that subcommittee.
So what the charge would be to investigate, address the FEMA mapping, and what was the other thing you wanted to address?
The CDP erosion control policy. And the idea was to bring in, I think, Chuck, if you're still online, can I bring you forward again, Chuck? Sorry, Mr. Flaherty, if you're still there. I think you said chapter 7.
Yes, I'm still here, but I'm not putting the video on because I've got my night shirt on.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
All right.
Was it I just want to make sure that we set up the subcommittee so that we can bring your documents forward. Was that some of the stuff you said was that was developed but not implemented? Was that chapter 7 you said of the county code that was supposed to be revised?
Chapter 27. Chapter 27. Chapter 27. Councilmember Kimura remembers we had when Brenda Ford was on the council, and I think it was Pete Hoffman was the chair at that time. Anyway, years ago, the state had to revise the flooding control anyway, and so during that process, they tried to deal with flood control issues, and it went on for months. It was kind of messy, but the Hoklea litigation itself required that chapter, I believe it's chapter 10, the erosion control ordinance has grubbing.
That's the one I was at. Yeah, the erosion control is chapter 10.
Yeah. DPW actually got together with the community, and Nancy Pasico was also involved in this, by the way, and actually put together a draft ordinance. For some reason, it was supposed to have been introduced to the county council, but nobody ever did. So that work has already been done. Now, whether or not y'all want to make changes, but I mean, there were public meetings. DPW was, I believe, the lead agency on that, and there were public meetings that were held and input, and they consulted with, experts in the field and whatnot. So a lot of that was done already. So I think that would be a good starting point. I will get you what information that I have about that process so you can see who was involved and whatnot. They may want to be involved now. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway,
Okay.
that's that.
Thank you. So,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to establish a subcommittee to one, review Chapter 27 of the County Code. Two, review Chapter 10 regarding the erosion control. It might be Chapter 10. Keiko, can you help us double check on that, the erosion control?
Yeah.
And three, bring forward previous communications from previous administrations or settlements regarding flood control within the Kona district. And four, establish a direct communication relationship with DPW.
And well, this is being recorded, so you'll get this all down right, Keiko.
We got the bestesses. We got Alexis, who's the bestesses, and Keiko is the bestesses. And so they're getting it down.
That's
Alexis,
right.
yeah,
So-
Alexis
so
is
you would
actually
like to-
so sorry.
so-
Alexis is actually so great that she went back and found the minutes of when the
first
director
one.
of DPW came to the
Yeah.
action committee. So if she's able to, she'll drop the PDF into the chat. Otherwise, we'll send it out to folks after. But just as a reminder, conversation of what happened at the previous action committee meeting.
So, Madam Chair, that's my motion. I hope I can get a second, please.
Yes.
Or
Do we
so
have
that
a-
we can have a discussion, please. Yeah.
Right. So that's Jane's motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Janice seconds?
Yep.
Is there any other discussion as to establishing this subcommittee?
Madam Chair, Kari, I'd like to know if there's at some point we may have to discuss between Kona open space and floods as well. Maybe in the future, Kari, like, do you think that we would just do that at the committee of whole, or should we be able to meet within committee?
So I think there's two issues, yeah. So one I think is when you're looking at Chapter 27 and Chapter 10, you're looking at those ordinance in particular. Whereas I look at Kona Open Space Network as part of the solution to basically handling a lot of different issues, not just
Flood,
groundwater. Yeah. So I think there are two different ways to look at it. And so I think if it's looking at ordinance, that's a little bit separate. I think it's gonna be a little bit more engineering based. Yeah. And the other one's really knitting a lot, like you're saying, like knitting a lot of different elements of community. So I think we can keep them separate until time, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
But
Sounds good.
I'm interested in supporting this effort too.
Yeah, awesome.
Do we have?
I don't have any more comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Shane. Do we have any other comments?
Yeah, I have a question to bring forward, and that is, what is the purpose of this subcommittee in terms of trying to create something that is, I mean, is the intent to revise the Chapter 27 statute? Is that the intent? I'm uncertain.
Madam Chair, if I may. Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that question, David. That's a great question, because as we develop investigatory subcommittees, I've understood it that sometimes what we're doing is we're just diving in to see what potentials are available, whether it's a revision or not. We're not sure at this point, but that's why it's an investigatory committee to understand what is in the policy, what needs to be brought forward, what needs to be implemented, and perhaps it's not a policy change, perhaps it is. And so at that point, that's when we start working with bringing in either the people who can develop policy changes, such as our Director of Public Works or our Councilman Inaba, who's hanging out with us tonight, and just other possible ways if we needed to make any kind of policy changes. But at this point, it's kind of investigatory. We're not sure, but at the past previous meetings, if I may, George had brought forward some really interesting facts, which I know growing up in Kona, it's kind of a trend. And what's happening is there's people who are paying flood insurance out there that are not protected from it. Their farms are still being destroyed, not just the natural resources in our ocean that are being destroyed, and by the way, those natural resources are impacting our fisheries. So our local fishermen who rely on those kinds of economic resources as well for them are being impacted by this runoff. Yet our FEMA mapping does not coincide or support some of the ways that we could mitigate the flood problems.
Okay.
Is that helpful, David? I hope I helped out with that.
Well, here's, and maybe this is a conversation that should be tabled for an aside. The issue with floodplain management, and that's really what Chapter 27 addresses, and that is that the floodplain management is based off of specifically the guidelines created by the U.S. National Flood Insurance Act of 1968, and it also has findings for the County of Hawaii and how they interpret the floodplain management. The issue that was brought up by George earlier has to do specifically not with floodplain management, but flooding into the coastal waterways. So there's a difference in what we're looking at with Chapter 27 and what George was addressing, and that is how the waters from Malka carry erosion into the ocean. So that is, I guess, where my question is, are we looking for tools on how we can address this to the planning department or public works? Because in my opinion, there's a fine line of what we as the action committee can really manifest into action for the county council to address. I mean, that's where I'm looking at it. So
also, and I'm not real sure to this, but there's also a Chapter 10 that I mentioned that addresses the erosion control as well. That's part of the motion as well, not just Chapter 27.
Erosion control is also part of the public works, and that is for developments and for land use.
Correct.
So here's my background. I was for the Kohani development, I was in charge of the SW3P stormwater erosion control plan for the whole development. I was managing it on a daily and weekly basis for the development, and I have a lot of background in it. I also spoke to a civil engineer who has been part of the county and has, as a civil engineer, she's developed erosion control plans for developments all up and down the coast. So that's where my background is, and I have a pretty thorough understanding of what's going on. I understand what Georgia's I guess concerns are in having water runoff into the ocean, and that obviously is a challenge, speaking for trying to mitigate keeping erosion and runoff, stormwater runoff into the ocean to protect our fish habitats. But in a lot of aspects that I believe I've seen, there is, you have undeveloped land. You showed pictures directly that they had. I saw some of the muddy roads that were there. and that is essentially undeveloped land, which you don't have erosion control features on those lands. So if it's undeveloped and it's just a muddy road, that muddy road can cause the water runoff into the ocean, and that's not something that's being managed by Public Works or the Planning Department or the DPW or even the Chapter 27 or Chapter 10. So
you're saying that might need something else in addition.
Well, Madam
And we
Chair,
might
I don't
find
know.
that.
Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead, Shane.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I'd like to say that I don't want to discuss the merits. I think that's why we're asking for a subcommittee, an investigatory committee.
Okay.
And I feel that that's where the conversations must take place, is in that committee. I don't think our agenda allows us to take up the issue itself tonight. And
Right.
so mahalo for the background, David, but that's the reason why when we set up a subcommittee, it's an investigatory committee. So if you like to add language to that, I'm open to it. But yeah, as far as the merits or what needs to be discussed, I think we cannot go into that discussion tonight, Madam Chair. It wasn't listed on the agenda, and therefore we cannot open up for testifiers to come and testify.
So, Keiko?
Just a suggestion in listening to the conversation, if we just add a word in there into the goal of the investigatory subcommittee, if we investigate and make recommendations, so whether that recommendation is a code change that needs to happen or there's no recommendation if it's out of the purview, but that can be determined by the subcommittee themselves, and then they can
Thanks, Keiko.
determine the recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll take
for
that
the
as a friendly
clarification.
amendment. Yeah.
Is there any other discussion?
Chair, I'm just gonna read out loud what one of our community members put in the chat. Cindy Tuttle commented maybe about 10 minutes ago, and she said, may I suggest that you look at 3 levels of flooding: federal FEMA maps, district-wide flooding, and localized flooding, as FEMA maps only address federal level events. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. I'll take that as a friendly too, as well, as part of the subcommittee goals.
Any other discussion? Keiko, do we need to pass this first and then find out who wants to be on this committee? Or do we need to know that we've got more than just Shane working on this?
I think we can identify folks who are interested and then vote.
Okay, so Shane has offered to be the chair. And do we have any other members who would like to work with him on this committee? And am I correct? Is it 3 total, or can we have more? 4 total. Or Kari says 5. Or
No, sorry.
Kari says she
I'm
wants to work
volunteering.
on it. Okay, Kari has volunteered. Is there anybody else that would like to work on this subcommittee? Can we move ahead with 2?
Madam Chair, I think we can move ahead with just 1, because we can have a majority of community as well. As long as there's 1 action committee member that's in the meeting, then it becomes a subcommittee. So that person would have to convene the subcommittee, and then we would report back to the committee of whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now we have 2 that have offered to be on the committee, Shane and Kari. And so let's go ahead and vote on the motion. So do you want to have it read again? We did add some friendly amendments.
Madam Chair, if you can read the motion again, that would be great. just so that everyone's clear on what they're voting on. There's no question to the vote.
Alexis, do you have it? Can you read it to us?
Sorry, Keiko, can you read it?
I have pieces, which is why we're so thankful for the recording. And so we started with investigation and review of Hawaii County Code Chapter 27, Chapter 10, also including previous communications regarding flood control in the Kona district. And then the friendly amendments were to add the term, to add make recommendations so that the subcommittee could then make recommendations to the planning director, who could then pass it on to whomever needed it. And then the last friendly amendment came from the chat, which was to include in the investigation three different levels of flooding: federal FEMA maps, district-wide flooding, and localized flooding. And we'll condense that and put it into prettier language. Sorry, folks.
So are you ready to vote? All right, let's call for the vote. Let's see. I'm going to ask names that I see. Kari?
Aye.
Shane?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Franz?
Aye.
Janice?
Aye.
Rosalind?
Aye.
Is there any other members here that I don't see? And I vote aye, so motion carries. So we have our subcommittee, Shane. So we
Yes,
will
mahalo
point,
nui, everyone.
if it's all right, I'm appointing Shane as chair and Kari as member, and you can have community members be part of your subcommittee. So I see that Councilmember Rebecca Villegas has joined us. Welcome.
Aloha.
So now we're on to, are there any other actions that we want to discuss that possibly we would want to have a subcommittee or at least discuss it a little bit? We have affordable housing, which was that just yesterday, Councilman Inaba, that the council voted on Resolution 179-21 to move ahead on an affordable housing project.
Yes, here in District 8 near Kealakekee School, the Honuaula resolution passed through council, exempting the project from $200,000 in permitting fees and granting them the rezoning they need. And that was done through the 201H application that Honuaula submitted.
So I think that was like 112 units from 1 to 4 bedrooms.
Correct.
Up to what was it? 170? How much was it? 70 AMI or 80 AMI? So that puts a drop in the bucket of all the number of affordable housing that we need here on our West Hawaii area. So I was looking through what we have for housing in our CDP, and I was looking at that really nice chart that our planning was Keiko or that put it together for us, but of all the different items, the chart of different items in our plan in different areas, and the estimated timeframes of when these things could be implemented, and also who would be doing it. And I noticed under housing, there was HSG. A was to establish a Kona nonprofit. And that the estimated time frame and who would do it was the Office of Housing and Community Development. And I don't think that has been done. I asked Sharon Hirota in Housing and Community Development about it, and she didn't think that had ever been started. And I can't think of Kona nonprofit that would be working on the issue of funding, just establishing a trust fund for low-income housing and a number of different items. So I was thinking that maybe we need a investigatory subcommittee to look over that whole section in housing that has to do with that Kona nonprofit and see what parts of it has actually been done, maybe not with a nonprofit, but different groups, because I know there's different groups that have been working in this area, and just determine where we are with all of this. So that was my thought on housing. I know that Franz was also interested in this area. I don't know, Franz, if you had any thoughts on what we could do in this area of moving the housing section of the CDP along its implementation.
I think that belongs more in community groups that are directly involved with the homeless, like the groups where it works now. I don't think there's a lot that the CDP group can do because it's not so much about regulations, it's about initiatives that people can take under the certain regulations.
I think one thing that could happen is a discussion on how the current and yeah, Franz is correct. Sorry, Kalamai.
Sean, you have the floor now. Shane, I'm sorry.
I was thinking that because Franz is correct. I think that it like based on the conversation on what you said, like I think it's more on the ground, boots on the ground kind of activity versus, because that was going to be my next question. Was how's it relatable to our work with the CDP itself, the book itself, and the policies that we actually have? If there's a conflict or if there is something that we need to revise or amend, then I think that's where the investigatory committee can come into place with affordable housing. What is funny is I remember you brought this up in the last meeting and I actually checked it and I wasn't sure, like I couldn't remember like what the conversations was, but I think what you would want to do is probably take a look at what the existing policies that are in our CDP right now, in the Kona CDP right now regarding housing.
Yeah, well, that's what I took a look at, and policy HSG 1.1 says the Kona CDP committee should advocate for existing nonprofit corporations or the creation of a new nonprofit corporation to carry out the housing policies of this section. And that's why I was thinking about this is we can't really advocate for it unless we know really what's going on at this point. And that's what I was just, wanting to do is take a look at what's going on in this area. And, is there a housing nonprofit? A Kona housing nonprofit? No, I don't think so. So at least if we look at it, we know, what everybody is doing and what might need our advocacy to complete.
I like the idea, but I don't know, like I think, Madam Chair, I think I've heard some conversations regarding nonprofits that would look into providing affordable housing based on my professional work in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard some. I've heard some wanting to actually work in developments that were on state land. as far as affordable housing, and it'll be nonprofit versus for-profit based. But I don't know if there's an actual organization. I would like to probably, I don't even know who to go to see if they can bring up education, but maybe if we can table this to discuss at our next meeting, so that maybe I can do a little bit of homework to find out how we could bring education to this committee regarding the potential, because I think our CDP says that it calls for creating a nonprofit or called for supporting a nonprofit, right? That would address affordable housing. So
Well,
I don't know.
it's not
I think
just-
there's potentially a couple that I've heard, and so I wanted to see if we can table that and see if we could bring them forward to have a discussion. I'm not sure if they're already working with with planning yet. I think they are. I'm not sure. I gotta go ask.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I can make a comment.
First, Kari had her hand up, and then Franz. And was that Franz that
Yes.
wanted to make? Yeah. So Kari first, and then Franz.
So, so my question is, or I guess maybe more comment, just feeding off of the fact that there's an affordable housing project that the county council is supporting, right? So that to me that would be a really great test case for us to look at what is in our CDP in terms of when we had shifted from the shall to we became optional, right?
Yes, it
And so,
became optional.
and so I think it's really important for us to see and use that as a test case to see where is there still friction from our document, because we didn't have affordable housing show up for years. And the apartment buildings that are near Kealakekee High School, which was really the most recent development within the CDP addressing it, their entitlements were prior to that. So I'm curious, and I think it would be a really good thing for planning to help us track so we can understand what is the document really helping with, where is there friction that's preventing more of this from happening, and how can we do good revisions as opposed to just whole scale ones. So
Thank you, Kari. So Franz?
I think it's a question what the scope is and the tasks of the committee, because I think the problem is more that the affordable housing doesn't get executed right now. And I'm just saying it general, so it may be wrong in detail, but in general, there's a lot of development where 10 or 20% of the housing has to be affordable housing. And often they can pay a certain sum, lump sum, so they don't have to pay it, or they do an exchange of property. So there's money coming into the county for affordable housing, but then often it's not really used for affordable housing. And I think that's more a procedural issue. If the committee can address that and make recommendations what needs to be changed in the county rules and regulations to ensure that any funds for affordable housing go to affordable housing, that when affordable housing is supposed to happen, that it actually happens. And then also what affordable housing is, because a lot of the affordable housing is not affordable. So that if the committee addresses those points and makes recommendation, there I see purpose, yes.
So we have a recommendation to table this till the next meeting, and I would be willing to do that, to look into it more and come up with more of a proposal or a presentation of what we know is happening already.
I'm sure if Keiko can take the recommendations from Carrie so that the planning department can probably give us some sort of synopsis of what's really going on right now with affordable housing, that would be great.
Yep, can do. I think it might also be important, Shirley, to pull maybe some of the work that CAP is doing and also some of the work that Vibrant Hawaii is doing, because those are also touching all of our affordable housing issues. And
That's
so if we're
right.
able to pull that together, some county-based and some community-based, but I think there's a lot of power in what community is doing right now.
And
So I think
there's a lot of documentation out there already. And this was what I was getting at, is what's out there, and you know, can we move any of this ahead that might not be done? So I agree with that. So if we can put that on the agenda then for next time, and I can work with you on that as well, Keiko. Thank you. Are there any other issues that we want to discuss to possibly have a investigatory subcommittee that any of us are working on or would like to work on? All right. So we do have one item for the agenda for next time. And another one that I was thinking of is 2022 will be coming up after our next meeting. So we probably should put the election of officers on the agenda. Is there anything else anybody sees for the agenda for our next meeting, which is November 10th?
When's the deadline to call my Janice?
Janice?
I was just going to say, can we just email you or Charlie and just if we think of something, because that's a long time from now. So
Sure.
something come up. And I think, you know, I'm interested in somehow what I was talking about is just getting some kind of subcommittee that's somehow relating punk. And, you know, I've been thinking about that, talking about it for years, but just, I'm going to try to talk to some community members and just see if there's an interest there, if somebody else can help me land on, you know, how to make that effective and worthwhile moving forward.
Sure. Yes, you can go ahead and do that, and or you can email Keiko as well.
All right.
Keiko.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Janice, is that your frogs in the background?
Yeah. Janice, you're
Oh,
unmute.
yes, they are. They're my little darlings.
I own the same. They're all over.
They are stronger than I.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
They're sneakier too.
They're sneaky and they can do it for no money. I tried to kill them for lots of money. They're here to stay, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's how we take it on our property too.
So Janice, did you have another item, or you just don't have your hand down?
No, thank you. I don't know. I just didn't, I'm having a little trouble with the put your hand down part. Sorry. Thank
Me
you.
too. All right, if there's no other agenda items, it's time to adjourn the meeting then.
Chair David, sorry,
Yes.
I just wanted to make a quick announcement real quick.
Oh, sure.
I know I try to be a part of these committee meetings so I can hear what you folks are saying. And, you know, a lot of times we don't have intersection between council and these committees that guide what we do in council. But I just wanted to put it out there that Councilmember Villegas and I are hosting a community informal talk story next Wednesday via Zoom. So I'll just send the link, and that's just a chance for us. It's not an agenda, it's just a talk story. We'll be sharing some updates from the councils and on what has transpired. And then if you folks just want to share with your circles or participate to share your thoughts so that we can you know, hear them and maybe take action where we can. I wanted to put that out there. So I'll send the Zoom link in the chat, and that's just an open invitation. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that invitation. So let's make sure to do that, to get it out to all of our groups that we'll have that talk story next week with Councilmember Inaba and Villegas. Thank you both for being here tonight too. Any other announcements? Then I call this meeting adjourned at 6:35 p.m. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Bye.
Night. Thank you so much, everybody.